Cool. Is it true that some foods are addictive? More so than the food, it's the kind of additives and the chemicals and the stimulants that are addictive. You look at sort of caffeine as an example. We get our guys to cut caffeine out in their plan. Caffeine can be quite addictive to the point that if you do withdraw it, you get withdrawal symptoms. You can really get quite sort of tough sort of headaches and nausea, things like that. Same can happen when you withdraw sugary foods from your diet. It's the sugar that's the sort of the addictive sort of chemical, as it were, as opposed to sort of foods as such. And then you look at things like MSG, which gets added to a lot of foods. So the monosodium glutamate, you see that in a lot of crisps, and that's why the crisps are very addictive. It's not the potato as such, which the crisps are made from, is addictive. It's the chemicals that are added to it, and this is a big part of why we remove processed foods from our programs with our clients. Because it has such an effect on your body at all sorts of different levels. So that's where you sort of, again, your cravings kind of come into things, because if you've got an addictive chemical and your body's calling out for something, you're much more likely to go for the addictive chemical than you are for the sort of the clean, sort of more natural product. So if you can take a period of time to clean those foods out of your system, you actually become much more in control of your food choices. It becomes a lot easier to maintain in the long term. You're not so much of a sort of a slave to the sort of the cravings. So yeah, definitely.
I don't have a lot of time in the morning to cook a good breakfast, i.e., kind of eggs, bacon, etc. What can you suggest I have instead? And if you say porridge, please suggest a way to make it taste less bland. A good one, obviously, we get this kind of brought up a lot, and some people we've had on the counter just kind of put a little bit of water on it. Yeah, I mean, that's obviously going to feel like you're in prison. So time isn't the issue, like we've put on there. It really is about preparing your days ahead, each night, whether it's, and again, we use this with clients all the time, personal training clients, etc. as well. It's just really kind of planning ahead, and whether you cook slightly larger meals on the evening, and then half of that you put in a box and it's in the fridge waiting for you for the next day's lunch. It's things like that, just about preparing. It doesn't take much more to chop up a few more vegetables, etc., or have put a bit more meat in there so that you've got enough for the day after. It's all within that time that you're cooking, so you're not actually cooking for longer. It's just about thinking ahead and preparing what type of day you've got the day after, and how you can best prepare for them obstacles of work in your time and make the most of your time. And if you've got easy things around, then it's going to make life a lot easier for you and stop you from grabbing the convenience confectionery foods, which we all do and have done in the past, granted. Good breakfast ideas. Nathan's favourite, bit of stir fry in the morning. Absolutely loves it.
All right.
Salmon scrambled eggs, yeah, absolutely fantastic. That's got to be kind of one of my favourites in there. Spinach omelettes, again, lots of kind of variations that you can kind of read through. Rice and almond milks, obviously the better option. Try and come away from obviously your main options, and obviously some people don't get on with soya, etc., and sometimes that can be an irritant to some people. So going down them options, they're going to at least taste a bit better than water. Natural yogurts, yeah, and fruit and seeds. So again, there's plenty of options on there in terms of smoothies, etc. But again, when you start to think about, well, are we cutting my cereals out of my bread, and things of that nature, right, what am I going to have? But you can see quite easily we've got quite a few down there, and there's I'm sure you can straight away think of lots of other options that you'd put in your omelettes, lots of different options that you may have as a substitute rather than salmon, etc. So there's many options just on from that. There's probably another 10, 20 options on from that, just varying and mixing and matching things around. So you can see suddenly you can get get quite a few options just from that. Not looking at it as a format of right. Well, I've got hardly any options now once I've cut out a few different things. So it really is the kind of key to that is preparation. Again, going on from that, we've obviously developed the recipe book, which obviously all of our campers that are listening, you guys have all got that, and plenty of kind of ideas, and there's at least kind of 20 smoothies in there, which all taste really good. So yeah.
Cool, good stuff. I watched Biggest Loser, and they suggested if you're hungry to have a glass of low-fat milk because it's low in sugar, fat, and calories. Are dairy products like milk bad for you, or are they those eat in moderation type food groups? Well, first of all, try not to take any advice from TV, magazines, or newspapers, because all they want to do is sell their TV program, their magazine, or their newspaper. They're not out to give you advice, and I would advise you not to take that advice from them. Moving on from that, I mean, some people will react to milk, some people won't. Some people are lactose intolerant, so people will react to the lactose in milk. But the kind of thing that I kind of explain to people is that the milk is for baby cows. If you look at where sort of milks get their sort of calcium from, because that's the kind of the response that I get to people when I say, well, you shouldn't have milk. It's like, well, where do I get calcium from? And that's good marketing, because the milk boards have said, right, we've called something calci yummy, and then it's got into our heads that we have to get calcium from milk, and that's just great marketing. But beyond the initial sort of suckling, when the baby cows are getting their milk from the cow, where do they get their calcium from? They get it from grass. So where can we get our calcium from other than milk sources? We can get it from all our green sort of leafy vegetables. So we can get it from our sort of our spinach, our broccoli, our kale, all the sort of real dark green sort of vegetables. You can also get it from some sort of nuts and seeds and things like that as well. So you can get plenty within your diet without it all having to come from milk. So try to cut down on the dairy products as much as you can. We get our guys again to cut that out for the sort of 30 days initially, but then sure, keep it as an eat in moderation type food afterwards if you feel that that's something you want to bring back in. But you will perhaps find that you're a little bit healthier for it for trying some of the alternatives. Okay. And then we've put on the bottom there as well that thirst is often mistaken for hunger. So where the Biggest Loser suggested that if you're feeling hungry to have something to kind of, I suppose, tide you over that's low calorie, often when we're hungry, we've mistaken thirst for it. We're dehydrated. So have a glass of water first and see how you feel 10 minutes later. You might find that actually it's not that you're hungry, you're a little bit thirsty, and that will take you through to your next main meal anyway, so that you're not getting those extra calories from snacks as you go along. Okay.
Again, we've got a random question. Loving it. I read in a running magazine that sweet potato is better for you than a normal potato. Is that correct? And if so, why? Also, is broccoli better for you than cauliflower? Again, kind of when we obviously looked into it, I mean, sweet potato is lower GI. We look at that, and obviously we incorporate that a little bit into the eating plans and things like that. So again, it's not about kind of a definite better option. It's what you're going to have with that. If you have sweet potato and then stack that full of loads of other stuff, then that's a different thing. But sweet potato, yeah, I would generally look at that as a better option. It is lower GI.
Just to jump in there, guys, GI is glycemic index.
Sorry.
So your glycemic index is a kind of a rating score on how quickly carbohydrates are broken down and released into your bloodstream. So if they're released very quickly into your bloodstream, that tends to make your insulin levels shoot up very quickly, which means that you get quite a lot of sort of quick energy from that food, but then all of a sudden you get a quick crash from it as well. Whereas your lower GI foods tend to give a slower release. You get a slower release of energy for which lasts a bit longer, so which is better for your blood sugar levels. Okay.
Cool. No
worries.
Yeah. Just assuming everyone knows what GI is. Sorry, guys. Again, kind of moving on to the second kind of part of the question. Obviously, the darker the fruit, and veg, the better for us. So again, we're going to have a lot more nutrients, a lot more antioxidants in there, like Nathan touched on in terms of the calcium side of things again. So we're going to get a little more kind of nutrients. So broccoli, a better option, but just trying to incorporate as much variation as you can within your diet. It's not to say, right, broccoli's better than cauliflower, right, I'm going to overdose dramatically on broccoli. I mean, it's just about the variation is the key with this question. So with this answer, so just try and vary as much kind of fruits and vegetables as possible, and that way you're kind of covering all base in terms of nutrients that you're taking on board. Okay.
Okay, so why are wheat products not good for weight loss, and is it really important to avoid any wheat and gluten? It's kind of, I mean, wheat in the form we receive it generally is quite hard to digest. Wheat in itself isn't necessarily bad if you have the whole sort of wheat germ, the whole sort of, you often hear of sort of whole grains. But even the whole grains that we get in terms of our cereals and things like that have been really overly broken down, overly processed. To the point that what we actually get isn't that recognizable by the body as a food source. So our body really struggles to digest it. So if it's having trouble digesting the wheat, that can have an effect on how we digest other foods as well in the digestive tract. That means that we're finding it harder to get nutrients into our body. If we find it harder to get into our nutrients into our body, they don't get to the cells as quickly, and our body's calling out again and again for more foods. You also find that the wheat can be an irritant for a lot of people, particularly gluten as well. You see gluten intolerance and sort of celiac disease, things like that. Celiac disease is the extreme level. You'd get very ill if you took the wheat and gluten on board. There's certain degrees across the sort of the spectrum to how irritated you get by it, but it does cause a lot of bloating, a lot of discomfort. So alongside the digestive issues, it just really slows down the process for you. So if you can avoid it and you can look for alternatives, you're really going to benefit from it.